What is a father? What is a dad? A dad is someone who waits to catch you before you fall. But instead he picks you up, brushes you off, and lets you try again. A dad is someone who wants to keep you from making mistakes, but instead lets you find your own way, even though his heart breaks in silence when you get hurt. A dad is someone who holds you when you cry, scolds you when you break the rules, and shines with pride when you succeed, and has faith in you even when you fail. A grandpa is the fellow that's there to help children get into mischief that they haven't thought of yet. Shortly after the pastor called and asked me if I wouldn't be kind enough to share in church, I got a phone call from the church I grew up in. 1952, the church was started, and I went there to be a portion of the fellowship. And it was ironic that they would call at this time because, we seem to think that a father raises a child or a mother raises a child. You know something? There is so much truth in the old adage that it takes a village to grow a kid, to grow a child. This morning as I look over this fellowship, Twyla and I have only been a portion of your sphere of acquaintances since 13 years ago. But this church has had an impact on the life of my family long before any of that took place. I think of the Vest and the Sheltons. They had two beautiful daughters, Jennifer and Stephanie. They were a part of my son's life growing up. They were the ladies that began to express interest in the things that kids talk about. I think of the Raglins. My son grew up never being chosen by Bobby to play on his ball teams. He wasn't good enough to get on Bobby's teams. We did beat Bobby a couple of times. Butch Tyree sitting here this morning. I didn't know whether they'd be back from the beach or not. Butch has had an impact in my life because he was a teacher at Northside School when my children came through the way. My son is a better man today because of the things that Butch put into the athletes that played ball at Northside. They're Journells. Ken has gone on to his reward, but all of the kids in North County that played ball in the North Roanoke Recreation Club, hey, you know something? It wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been for the Journells. And for that family sharing that sphere of themselves out into the community. You go on further, the Jordans. Chucky he rode the bus each and every day with my daughter going to school up a little place called Northside Middle, Burlington Elementary, Northside High School. And the give and take the kids have, that's something there. And of course, Mr. Jordan's Mr. Santa Claus. I mean, you see him any place, you recognize the fuzz right away. So you know that this is a man and a family that puts things into the tentacles of the community. Jerry Canada was working at the DMV when both of my kids got their driver's license. Now, he didn't say anything to them, but I knew who he was. And I said to my son, there's Mr. Driver Education over there. There's the man that passes out your driver's license. You don't pass the test, he don't sign the check. You don't get the ticket. You see, I today stand before you as a recipient of the leadership of this congregation. You sit here today, some of you with children and grandchildren who've been recipients of the love of this fellowship. You know what I'm saying to you today? And it's going to continue to grow. This morning as I got here for church, one of my buddies came forward and he gave me a Father's Day card. It means a lot to me. I want to share with you what it says. We're bread making buds. He has a picture of me and he has no hair on it. And it says, from Devin to Charlie Briscoe. Devin, thank you for my card. I appreciate it. I've had 2 cards today, and this is one of them, and this is going to go on my office wall, okay? I appreciate it. You see, Devin's my buddy, and I hope in some small way things can be said and done that will have an impact on his life. My Boy Scout master, when I was growing up in the church I grew up in, he was 6'8". And I tell you what, scoutmasters are like gods to start with, but then when you get one that's that big, it just kind of scares you. And he said to me as a youngster growing up, because my brother and I sang in church every other Sunday all the way through growing up, and I guess it was because they couldn't find anybody else to sing. Either that or my mom was the organist and she just played funny music, and we got stuck with the job. But he said something so important that has never left my mind. Said, a careful man I want to be, for little steps they follow me. Little steps they follow me. Our culture today is in free fall, moral free fall. God has given children someone whose power and prestige is greater than all the influences of society. A young person's life is impacted by a lot of things, but the most important thing they have is a father and a grandfather. Don't think that, you know what being a grandfather is, don't you? Grandfather, that's a gift for you not killing your own kids. And so I don't take lightly the joy that's mine of being a 7-time grandfather. 5 of them by birth and 2 by adoption. And they're so important to me and to the part of my life. And so I understand that children have to have this one person who will make a difference in their life. Granddads, don't be afraid to hug your kids. And more than that, don't be afraid to pick up your grandchildren and hug them. Pick them up, talk to them, put things into their lives that are special. If you were to come to my house, on my office wall, I have a bookcase and it's full of books, but I have one spot that's vacant. And it has a pipe rack on it, and it has 4 pipes. I don't smoke. But I have spent more than 1 hour on the opposite side of that bowl from a man that loved me without a question. A man that accepted my mistakes and loved me anyway. And when he passed away in 1966, I thought that I would die. And it was my granddad. He never, the whole time I knew him, he only walked on his feet for about 5 years. And after that, he had no sinew in his joints, and my grandpa walked on crutches. And he'd plant his crutches and throw his legs, plant his crutches and throw his legs. And so I gained a deep appreciation for learning to live with pain and to live with a smile on your face and a relationship with Jesus Christ that didn't stop, but grew because of what he would give you an importance to go through. The importance of a godly dad cannot be overstated, but how do we become warm and attentive fathers? How do we improve our parenting skills? In our passage today, we found 5 facts of fine fathers. A good dad must be. He must be a patient man, it said in that first one. It's honorable for a man to stop striving, since any fool can start a quarrel. A wise father must be patient. Kell and Nevich translate this verse and say, it is an honor for a man to remain far from strife, but every fool shows his teeth. Have you ever been around an irritable dog? You know, a dog that barks at you, and then when you get real close to him, he starts to growl, and then he shows his teeth. There's nothing scarier than walking up to a dog and the dog's just barking at you. You can handle that. But then when he begins to growl and his tail quits shaking, then his teeth come out. And when that happens, that begins to be an impact upon your life. You know something? So many times, we find out that we have an irritated dad. A dad who's always growling at his kids. A good dad cultivates a pleasant, patient, positive personality. None of us are totally inflappable, but it often helps if we memorize Scripture. When you feel yourself getting angry, instead of cussing and counting to 10 or kicking the dirt or mumbling or whatever the case might be for you, why don't you begin to learn a scripture that you can put into your repertoire of results and actions to give to those around you? Maybe Ephesians 6, verse 4, or Proverbs 15:1, Proverbs 29:11, or Proverbs 23 that I just read for you this morning. Make up your mind to be patient and learn to make a strategic exit whenever you find yourself losing control. Ask God to help you control your temper and learn to smile more at your children. The old adage that my mom always told us is, well, she said, you know something, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. You want a positive response out of your kids? Make sure it's as sweet as you want them to greet you. The fourth verse there says, a good father is also a hard-working man, not lazy nor a sluggard. One of the causes of the maladjusted, troubled children have been fathers who are too permissive or completely missing it all from the setting. Troubled children have been fathers that are too passive. Or one of the characteristics of a weak and passive father is found to be laziness. I'm talking about the man who drags home from work, flops himself down in front of the television set, opens up his favorite beverage, and stays there the whole evening long. That man is setting a sad example for his children. The world is lost. The work of the world and the church is great. And the days are short and the opportunities are big that you and I have. The Bible tells us to redeem the time because the day of evil. A good dad is a diligent man whose schedules include time for his wife and his children. John was an employee at the local automobile dealership. He was the man that changed the oil and put the grease in the car. We don't have to have grease nowadays, but it was one of the things that went with it back when I was growing up, and some of you as well. He would come home from work and his shoes were walked off on the heels, off on the side, and his uniform was covered in grease, but he'd stop in the garage and he'd grab his ball glove and he'd grab an extra one and he'd get the ball and he'd head right out to where the sun was at in the backyard. And he said, let's play a little catch. The neighbor looked across his fence one night and said, George, you've just put in 12 hours of work at the automobile dealership, changing tires, changing oil. Doesn't your back hurt? Aren't you tired? And George said, yeah. But he said, I'd rather have a backache today than a heartache tomorrow. Those hours that we put into our children, those hours that we put in playing ball, playing the musical instruments with them. My dad played a mean radio. I tell you what, he couldn't sing worth a lick. But one of the greatest memories in my mind today is when my mom sat at the piano and my brother, sister, and I and my dad sang for the evening worship service on Father's Day. My dad couldn't get through the song. He just stood there and cried. You know, I didn't understand it then. But you know, the older I get, I don't know about you, but I've got a spigot problem. Every time I get into something that gets just a little bit emotional, I tear. They can't shoot Lassie on television. I start crying. Even though I know Lassie will be in the next week's program. Those are things that just kind of move this old heart as I've reached that point in life. That fifth verse says, a good dad is also a listener. For our purposes today, I would like to paraphrase that verse 5. It says, the thoughts in a child's heart are like deep waters, but an understanding father draws them out. Yesterday, my wife wanted to do something. I was so excited I could hardly wait to get ready to go where she wanted to go. She wanted to go to the Greenbrier. She wanted to have lunch at the Greenbrier.
You weren't supposed to tell that.
I got her in a car, filled it up with gas, and we drove up Route 220 all the way over into her home state of West Virginia. She started breathing easier the moment we were across the line. She got there and, can you smell that wonderful air? I said, smells just like Virginia. She didn't know, this is West Virginia. We're almost heaven. We got to the Greenbrier and we're sitting there, and I'd had to take a couple of pictures of her in there by who was that lady at the Grace Kelly. I took a picture of her standing right there in front of Grace Kelly's portrait, and we went in and we sat down to eat our meal. And I'm catching up on my cell phone. I'm going down through that thing and just deleting this and deleting this and going. And I looked over and she was just looking at me. My wife, I have done the husbandly thing. I have taken you to the Greenbrier, my land. I said, what's the matter? She said, you're going to put your phone up and talk to me? You know, it used to be when we came in from playing and it was time for supper, what did we do? Sat around the table and we ate as a family, didn't we? Now you have to take the cell phones away from everybody, and so I was disciplined yesterday. The cell phone was taken away from me. I think the reason she took it away from me was she left hers at home. We were still able to talk and communicate, but you see, good conversation can't be turned on and off at will. You've got to let it bubble up. In other words, parents, don't just sit down with their children. Let's talk. Don't just talk about talking. Let's do it. You can't talk to somebody unless you do what? Look them in the eye. You can't pay attention if you're not looking in the eye. When I shake hands with little children, little boys, I'll say, look me in the eye. Don't give me one of those Baptist fishy handshakes. Give me something with something to grip onto. Lay that thing right in there like a man. And you know, that's important for us to do that. We've got to spend time together in a relaxed setting and give our children lots of informal opportunities to open up. Well, in that 6th verse it says, a good dad is also a faithful friend. A lot of men say, I love my wife and I love my children. Does he take time to be with them? Does he meet their emotional needs? Is he their champion? Does he confide to them his thoughts and his feelings? Does he fulfill his role as a spiritual leader of the household? Or is he faithful to God and God alone? Those are tough things to answer, fellas. Those are sometimes tough things to swallow. We get so wrapped up in our work. If I had one desire in my life at this stage, I wish I was 32 again. Not because I want to go through the pains of life, but I was so busy as a coach. I was taking care of everybody else's child that I sometimes left all that responsibility to the woman that I had married. I was too busy with my job, because you only go up as you win, or you only go up as you make more money. You only go up as you rise in titles. I enjoyed my children, but did they enjoy me? Is a much bigger question. Well, that 7th verse, it says, a good dad is a righteous man. He leads a blameless life of high character and caliber. He is committed to Jesus Christ and to his word, to prayer, and to his church. He is honest, modeling integrity for his children. I have to be honest with you, it hurts. I have probably said more evening prayers with my grandchildren than I did with my own. Why? The bus hadn't made it back from a ball game, or I had to deliver 12 children home in the van so that they could get back to their house while I dropped my son off so he could get his homework done and get his studies. And he'd have already in bed by the time I got home. You know, your children are going to mirror you. If you don't believe it, as you get older, just look in the mirror at yourself. The other day I swore up and down it was my dad looking back at me as I was getting ready to shave. He looked a lot better than I did, or I do. But so many times, every response in our life is mirrored in our children by what we did or we didn't do to bring them to where they need to be. The promise at the end of verse 7 says that children of such a man will be blessed. Happy is the child whose father is a patient man, a hard worker, a father who is a good listener, who is a faithful friend, who is a righteous soul. Happy are the children whose dad serves the living Lord.